Hello and welcome to the first issue of Technopolis. I'm your Technopolist and your High Techman. I am Ken-chan.
And I am Movies McConnell, otherwise known as MC2P4.
Okay, and he's the other Technopolist. And we're just going to take a moment and explain what this new show is. The new show, we're going to touch on things like cyberpunk culture, technology, all things Weibo and Otaku, science fiction, things like that. There's really no real hardcore set parameters, but we tend to lead more towards the cyberpunk culture kind of thing. A little bit about myself. I used to play in a heavy metal band for years. After that, I started a YouTube channel where I reviewed video game systems. After that, I started another YouTube channel where I talk about Linux and technology. It's more of a help channel. And now we are kicking off this new show with we will be calling them issues instead of episodes to give it a more journalistic kind of sound. And that's a little bit about me.
So let's just get right into it here. My email address is mc2p4@floatingfish.com, and you may find out about some of the musical acts that I've been working with, such as Imbued Vagary and Any Questions. I also wrote a sci-fi novel called Completely Out of Control, which is now having the sequel written to it. And I also do acrylic art. But mainly in this circumstance, Ken-chan and I had decided that we wanted to call this show initially, It's Always a Cyberpunk Conversation, because it's always a cyberpunk conversation. The big thing here is that our love of movies, technology, and sci-fi memorabilia in general tends to lead to these kinds of issues and these kinds of situations. So a lot of things will be related back and forth to each other, and as another book that I would like to write in the future, something called It's All Related, I think would be a good place to also give you the theme of what will be behind all of this. But having said this, I would turn it over to Ken-chan for a moment to start in on what we would consider to be our first, and I refuse to put my hands up and do air quotes to say this, but relating to cyberpunk culture and the early days. So with that, I would turn it over to you.
Okay, so cyberpunk culture, the term cyberpunk actually came by a guy named Bruce Bethke. First used the term, and it was a story that he wrote. It's a short story in 1983. And that led to the widespread use of the term, including the cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction. He also had a novel called Head Crash that won the Philip K. Dick Award in 1995 for science fiction original paperback published in the U.S. So, if you don't know who Philip K. Dick was, he was the guy who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and that, of course, led to the movie Blade Runner. And if you've read the book and seen the movie, you know that the two stories are completely different things. Yeah, entirely. I read the book. That's one of the few books that I've read, and I like that book. And then along comes, later on, you had William Gibson, who was also another famous author of the cyberpunk genre that I don't particularly care for too much because, while I consider myself to have somewhat of a vocabulary, I'm looking up every third word in that book. What's this mean? Well, okay, stop. What's this mean? Okay, stop. But, a little bit about the background of cyberpunk and where that comes from there.
And I think the one, you and I had spoken of this before previously, but I think it bears repeating and actually bringing it out here. We never want to trash anybody on this show. We never want to say, that's bad. because basically at the end of the day, and I'm trying to make movies all the time. I know you are. We're trying to do all these different things. So we certainly have an understanding that people that are doing these projects, whether they're writing or filming, narrating, whatever, they're putting a lot of time and effort into it. So there's really no, nothing known as something so bad unless it's just plotting, heavy-handed garbage, which, we wouldn't talk about anyway. Having said that, my particular challenge with William Gibson is almost exactly the same as yours. There seems to be maybe a middle ground. Okay, in one hand, you can read the Mad Scientist Club from like third grade and go, wow, I really like that, and that's a fun, easy read, and it's amazing, it's fun. And then you can read William Gibson, and then you can want to poke your eyes out because you really do, you have, especially for people that have read, like, and again, I don't want to rip on people or anything like that, but like Harry Potter books, and people say to me, hey, I never read till I read Harry Potter. And I'm thinking, wow, they would really have a hard time reading William Gibson. And not because William Gibson is so pretentious. There is a certain level of that, I would venture a guess. But at the same time, like we had said before, Johnny went to the corner and gently smoked his Johanns. And it's like, well, what's a Johann? It's like, oh, it's a Russian cigarette. Oh, okay. So I got to figure out pop culture for that period of time, along with all of these dictionary definitions and all these words, and then be thrown into, it's kind of like software development, on time, under budget, or bug free. You only get 2. So you don't get to be pretentious, wordy, and drop the viewer right into the thick of things, which would bring me to saying at this point, the next level of that kind of cyber stuff was my realization reading only about 2 years ago the Neil Stephenson book Snow Crash, and then reading the Diamond Age after that. And I actually feel like now I want to be careful in my sequel because I've already got a few things that are happening. My books and stuff go near a lot of scientific and science fiction space truth right now. So the big thing is, after reading the first book and then reading the second book by Neil Stephenson, I don't want to adopt much of his vernacular, if that means anything to anybody. I don't want to be, they say this is, imitation's the most sincere form of flattery, but, sometimes that falls flat in its face.
Right.
Right. So, having said that, are there other things that you've read beyond there that you, like some other things in newer, because there's so much. I mean, you could spend the rest of your life reading even books that went up to like the 80s.
Well, with the books and stuff like that, there's the newer the things that I do that are newer. Really, with the whole cyberpunk thing is the video games. Like, there's Cyberpunk 2077, which I'm sure I'm opening up a can of worms there. People, I have different opinions on that game. Some other video games more recently include Observer and State of Mind that I've played, but as far as the books go, not so much. And I also like to point out that some of this stuff, before the term cyberpunk came along, it was just science fiction. I mean, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep came... It was in 1968. It was written the year I was born. So that's how old... That's a 52-year-old... So that's well before...
Well, and think about this. Think about this. If you're going to say 52 years, right? When was the movie?
Yeah.
That was 40 years ago.
Yeah, almost.
The movie was literally 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of those movies where, I don't know if I said this to you recently, but I really enjoy like 12 Monkeys, stuff like that. When you watch 12 Monkeys, you go back and you watch Brazil. Well, at 25, I thought Brazil is a piece of garbage. Complete garbage. I was like, I hate that movie. Now that I'm 55, I'm like, that movie, got to go back and watch that now, because everything that movie pointed at, I was not the correct age to see it. I didn't understand it. And the same thing happened with me with Blade Runner. I wanted to hate Blade Runner from word one. God knows why. But I guess during that period of time in the 80s, right? And that's kind of where we're going to with this next topic. But think about, like, and we certainly don't have to be done with this at this point, but think about in the 1980s. Okay, I was 15 in 1980. So I saw Logan's Run in the movie theater. I saw Star Wars in the movie theater. They were great. Saw Alien in the theater. That scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if you watch an Alien, like basically all of the technology, the topology of the sci-fi realm was such that it looked exactly like the stuff in like Blade Runner and Alien, right? Because it's Ronald Shusett and all those guys, right? So the thing was, like, why would I not like Blade Runner? Like how? But you see, I think it just was. I had more of a like when Hardware came out. Everybody hated Hardware in 1993.
Oh, that's a classic. That's another Cyberpunk classic right there.
Everybody hates Hardware, right?
Yeah.
The thing about Hardware that I like is the fake hard science. You know, like the robot puts itself back together. Like that's what I need. Like if it's all like organic, like kind of Dune-ish. You know, it's like nothing against Frank Herbert and Dune, but that just kind of leaves me cold. You know me with music too. It's like you play Ain't No Mountain High Enough, and I'm just going to sit in the corner and drink.
Well, with the movie Hardware, one of the things that I like about the movie Hardware is it shows what appears to be YouTube videos almost. You know that they are so small and yellow and black. I want to squeeze them. You know, are those television channels, or is that something being served up on a computer somewhere? You know, it kind of comes off like almost like somebody predicting YouTube or some kind. Everybody has their own personal television station kind of thing in the future.
Streaming before streaming was streaming.
Right, before they knew how it would actually work. You know, what it would look like. You know, so they kind of knew that something like that was coming down the pipes. And then getting back to William Gibson, of course, he had that short story that turned into one of my favorite movies of all time, and as well as Movies McConnell here, one of his favorite movies, and that would be Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves. And that was, I think that story was in Burning Chrome or something like that, a collection of short stories.
Indeed, you are correct.
Okay, so I haven't read that, but
again,
I've seen the movie.
I
love the movie.
If I may interrupt you there, I would say I would have to connect back to where you said that the earlier movie was nothing like the story that was in what you just said that a little while ago. You said
about Blade Runner?
Yeah. Okay. The story of Johnny Mnemonic is so incredibly radically different. And just as a sidebar here, we can get to this later, this is exactly what happened with the name of the movie iRobot. And by that I mean the name iRobot refers to about 2 seconds in one 4-minute story in like a glimpse of one small shot of that movie. It should have just been called Robot Visions, but they couldn't call it that. They had to call it iRobot, so everybody knew what it was, that it was an Isaac Asimov book. But having said all of that, I would absolutely say right there that you're right on par with saying about how the story of Johnny Mnemonic is really just the story of Jones, the dolphin, and Johnny, and the killing floor. Like when they're the girl, Dina Meyer plays her in the Bodyguard, and they're up on the killing floor above where Spider and them drop bugs on people, like where they expand all that. But it's really, again, it's like one of those very small stories that they took and then said, okay, let's flesh out a whole movie out of it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, but yeah, Johnny Mnemonic, the stuff that's cool in that, like especially even like the Street Preacher, how he has like the little, see, we're not there yet, where he has the Bible that he opens, but yet down in the corner it's got the little communicator, and he's like, blessed be, blah blah blah. Yeah, what do you need? You need me to kill someone? Okay, fine. I think that's cool.
Another one of my favorite movies that came out that same year. That's also very cyberpunk and it's very hip. Is Hackers I really love that movie too. That movie was really good. And somebody was talking recently about somebody's thinking about remaking that, and I think that would completely ruin it. That movie's not about hacking. They show people hacking in that movie. There's no real hacking that goes on there. That movie's about style. That movie's about the way they dress. That movie's about the music and the crazy carrying on and everything else. It's really good. I really like that one. And it came out the same year as Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, I think that'd be about as poor as trying to remake The Matrix. Because it's one of those things where even though The Matrix isn't exactly one of my favorite movies, it's not a bad movie. But the thing about that is, it's one of those movies that stands in time because it can be any time and jump out to any time. So unless you have like radical things like now we have iPhones and stuff, and like that's obviously not part of that, again, that vernacular. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, that's the kind of movie that you can go, hey, it took place in 1999. It took place in 1999 and then now in this Neverland or where, so you can kind of suspend that disbelief. But I think you're absolutely right. With something like Hackers, there wasn't that Angelina Jolie and Matthew Lillard and all that, right?
Yep.
So at that point, it's absolutely more about style than it is anything about.
If they remade that movie and they showed real hacking in it, I'd be turned off. It would be boring. You can't. Who wants to watch somebody code? Nobody.
Well, that's one of the problems with my book is that there are a lot of conversations that go on between systems, and I tried to do like a computer patois. But if anybody sits down, like some geeky trekker that sits down and goes, well, the conundrum here is that the Tholian web could not have been. If somebody takes apart the pieces of supposed computer patois code that I have there and says, well, it's really not a tail minus T, 10 sleep, blah, blah, blah. Like if somebody tries to decode that, they're going to be sadly mistaken because none of what I've written there really means anything. It's more there for effect. It's more there for, this system agrees with this system. Did it do it the way that it would really work? No, probably not, right? I mean, I'm not going to spend the next 10 or 15 years of my life trying to research, something so minute. Now, having said that, you look at somebody like Neil Stephenson, when he did Snow Crash, he has stuff in there about Enki and all the different, Sumerian tablets, and then he's got a character named L. Ron Rife, which is really based on L. Ron Hubbard, who has the ship that goes around the world, and all, So it's like he spent years working on that. I'm no one. I don't have that money. It's like develop your own little video game or have a staff of 600 people, 10 of which are researchers for you. You could easily do that, right?
Right.
So I could see you driving like a whole video game world, but like you said, if they're going to sit there and you're going to be like, well, look at how cool I am. I can code to make this creature walk across the screen. Who cares?
Yeah. The cool part is where the creature gets up and walks across the street.
Exactly.
Sitting there for some reason, it's like in that movie, in the Hackers movie, it shows them doing this hacking, but they attach themselves to public payphones, and they had the phone freaking and all that, but they're hacking from places like that. And when they start the typing and stuff, they that's boring as hell. So they got to play the music and they got to make it look cooler than what it really is. Because if not, you're gonna have people are gonna be passing out from boredom. Know.
And you know what? It's funny you said that too, because that was like 95, right?
95. Yep.
No, that's like. I was just reading Anarchist Cookbook the other night that now you can buy from Walmart online. Right? Like, come on. How sanitized is it, right? So I was reading, but they still have all the phone freak stuff in there. It doesn't even relate anymore, like how to set up your towers and all that, right? How to do this and that. But I guess that would have been about the period of time where that was the end of that phone freak era, right? Like, 2400 baud modems and, like that was leading edge at that point.
A little handheld recorder where you record the on the phone and you play it back and thank you for inserting a quarter, or whatever, and it's
now
you get a free phone call.
Blue and red box and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's See, I'm trying to think of what else around that period of time, like 95, because like you also have like Universal Soldier, and see again, that's that weird like you go back and look at Universal Soldier. I do better downstairs with my two Amigas, and an old like JVC pattern generator. So I could do better than what they did in most of Universal Soldier, but it was just the fact that they were really taking that, just those little JVC devices and those little Panasonic devices, all that stuff that's like now just even part of like an iPhone, and they were really pushing those limits, like really. I think we're a little jaded now. We've got so much technology, we don't even know where to start sometimes. So, okay, well, in speaking about different technologies and how the computing power and situations have changed over the years and different decades, now we're kind of in the realm of handheld devices, kind of like things right out of Escape from LA, or at least getting pretty close to it, where you have your own remote control and can just spray the room with your holographic image that you're standing within and interacting with people in the room. I mean, we're almost there. But if we go back a little bit and again, talking about how the technology has changed and how the computing power has changed, video games of the 1980s were quite different than they are now. Ken-chan here had actually made me see from the standpoint that recently a lot of the gaming is going to start going even more mobile than it already is, especially in relation to the phone systems and all that. But we kind of remember.
Yeah, we grew up in this era. We went to arcades in the 1980s, and anybody who's young now, you missed out. you
what
missed
does
out.
What is it he says in Pixels? It's Adam Sandler saying we used to go to the arcade. They used to play music, and
we called it socializing. Yeah,
and we met girls there and stuff. It's like, what a concept, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah.
What are your best? Like I know Aladdin's Castle.
Aladdin's Castle. Right? Yeah, Chambersburg Mall. Those were some good times. Walking in there, I would walk in there on a Saturday. We go with my parents. My parents would take us there. We'd get our allowances and we'd blow the whole allowance right there.
To the mall.
Yeah, to the mall. We go in there. You could smell the hot buttered popcorn from the theater across the hall, mixed with the freshly shampooed carpet of Aladdin's Castle, because they kept that place c'est magnifique, immaculate. We'd walk in there. It's like walking into the entertainment center of the future or something, even though it really wasn't.
Yep.
The entertainment center of the future turned into this, But back then, that's what it was like. It's like you're walking on the deck of the Enterprise or something like that from Star Trek, and there's like all the noises and the colors and the lights and the bleeps and the blops and all that stuff, and it was a wonderful time to be alive.
Indeed it was. And as Damone would say now there's a reason why people call me Movies McConnell. I take a lot of crap because I'm always quoting movies and all these things. So here we go. Mm-hmm. You think about Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and you think about Damone saying, don't you want to go see Cheap Trick? The tunes. Your mommy's all right. Your daddy's all right. They just seem a little bit weird. Well, right here, all you got to do is say the same thing. The games, right? Let's run them down. You walked in, you had Ms. Pac-Man, you had Pac-Man, you had Star Castle. You had Star Castle. You had Be Careful. What's the one? Oh, there's like so many, but there's like, if you think about all the games, like just name
Asteroids, the Missile Command, Tron, Frogger, Rally X. Kickman. Remember Kickman?
No.
The little clown on the little unicycle, and he had to balance the balloons on his head.
Oh,
and Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Pac-Man was in that. Yeah, in the second level or something, he'd come down and eat the balloons off the guy's head.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. I forgot about that. But I mean, that was the thing. Ken-chan's absolutely right. If you didn't get to experience that, even I'm sure this is seen all around the world. Here in America, we have Dave & Buster's. And I mean, if you go to a Dave & Buster's, you might get a little taste of what it used to be like. But, now that's more of like a high end, it's like Galaxian sitting down. You've got like 6 people playing like horizontal Galaxian on a big screen and like where it's coming at you. Yeah, that's cool. but it's not what it was, where it was like you're going to the arcade because you're going to try to beat something. The scam, and I know I'm getting excited here, I'm talking way fast.
Yeah.
But the scam at Aladdin's Castle was no money. It was tokens, right? So you put in $1 and you got 4 tokens. Now, the first time, and I was quite the video game aficionado, having played everything from Word 1 that I ever saw. So I go in there, and these kids come up to me that are younger than me, and I'm like 13, 14, no, I guess I was older, 14, maybe, at the mall, the shoe mall, and because it was all shoe stores. And we went there, and these kids come up and go, "Hey, I'll sell you 4 tokens for $1." And I'm like, "Well, what's the rub? What's the scam?" Well, the scam was that for $5 you got
25 tokens.
Was it 25 tokens?
Yep, that's what it was.
So so you see, the scam. So the scam was these kids would go up there, and you can't blame them for being enterprising, because they were like, "I'll go there and buy $5 worth of tokens, sell it off." And so by the time they were done in the day,
they made $1 back.
Well, they would do it like all day long, so they would make money. And then my ex-brother-in-law's brother was, I don't want to say his name, but he was one of the managers there. So he used to give those kids like free games and stuff for being like enterprising and doing that too. So it was totally cool.
Yeah.
But yes. So what other, did you ever go down to Mr. Noel's arcade at MBD Sales down there?
Yes, there was that one right across the street from where I lived. Another one that I really enjoyed was at Hershey Park. Now, anybody that's ever been to Hershey Park, those rides are like whatever. But that arcade at that time, yeah, there was smoking and stuff going on in there, but it had a huge concrete floor. There had to be like 300 games in that thing. It was like wall to wall. That was another one. Now, there is one now near up north here from here. There is a place that has they sell used video game consoles and stuff, and in the back they have a very sizable arcade that's like reminiscent of the 80s arcades.
Let's go.
Yeah, sometime if you come up, we'll go. But they sell tokens. You get a cup when you go back there. You get a cup. You buy your tokens. You put your tokens in your cup, and you carry your cup around.
That's cool.
Yeah, but they have a lot of those old games up there.
You got to back up here. When you're talking about Hershey Park, I went there with our friend Ed years and years ago. He went with us to Hershey Park, and he insisted that he had to play the was it the Hercules pinball machine? It was giant, and it used a cue ball. The cue ball of a pool table was the pinball, and it was a double wide or triple wide machine. It was huge, and it was Hercules. Like the back box, you probably could have sublet an apartment out of the back box on the thing. It was huge. But the other ones that I'm thinking of, and I wanted to tell you also that out here, there's a place called the Pinball Parlor, and the guy has like the second floor is all like, one side's all old stuff, one side's all new stuff, and like when I say new, I mean really new, like crazy stuff. And then downstairs, it's Dance Dance Revolution and all that, like all the wacky stuff like that for kids. But it's like
all
$7
that healthy stuff that gets your heart pumping.
Yeah, it's like $7 an hour, but you can play like just everything's on free play. It's just go, just play. And he does like, I think it's like $12 for like 3 hours or something. I mean, you can just go and play. So pretty cool.
Wow.
But the other one that we have to cover, you have to cover, is Playland. Did you ever go to Playland at Penn State?
Never been.
Oh man, what a shame that it's done now. They don't have it anymore. But this place was they're talking about the Starship Enterprise. That was like, and they would bring in test games. So like they had a test game called Circus in there, and it would spin the wheel. It would do like the and spin the wheel, and then you would shoot at targets. Well, the guy saw that my older brother was playing it, and he came over and opened up the lid on it and like put like 100 games on it and goes, just play it and then come back and tell me what you think. And my brother played it for like hours and then went back and said, yeah, it's good this way and that way. And the guy wrote down all the info. So they would be like a test site for like, Bally and Williams and all that. So it's kind of neat. But the place was really cool. It was a really great air hockey place too, which can't beat air hockey.
Yeah, another thing about that era is you didn't have that. Nowadays you have like your hardcore gamers and your casual gamers. Back then there was no the hardcore gamers were the guys that played Stargate or Defender, and
right.
That's about as hardcore as it got. There really wasn't. Yeah. It was just there was just people playing video games. There was no distinction of a hardcore gamer is somebody that. Maybe that goes in and spends all their money playing just Pac-Man until they get the high score, maybe.
Right.
But there was no such thing. There wasn't this thing like you see today where, these people playing Battlefield make fun of these people playing, whatever, Cut the Rope or something like that, or Toon Blast. That's not a real game. Yes, it is. First of all,
everything was so new.
Yeah.
that literally. If you had Telstar Ranger at home, you would turn it on just to watch the ball go across the screen 30 times and then have it time out. Even more importantly is the game Meteor. Do you remember that? It was like a weird video game, and it would do a heartbeat. It would go do, 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 do. But if you held down like the one button, it would actually change what it did. And there were people that would just stand there and play around with it like it was like a synth or something, right?
What's it called? Meteor?
Meteor, I think is what it was called.
Okay.
But then the funniest part here is everything was so new. Like I said, you could watch a pixel go across the screen. My parents personally would send me to bed so early that I'd be up early watching the test pattern because it was interesting, right? Because like I'm a geek like that. But the funniest part was, and even to this day, down lower right in the front of the cabinet on a Defender machine is the reset button. Is the reset toggle.
Okay.
And so if somebody's standing there and you reset Defender and it goes through its reset grid and everything, people are like, wow. Like they're like, that's really cool. So I guess, little kids now are like, this stupid damn thing won't go up to the satellite and do this and that. We're like satellite schmatellite, man. Pretty colors. Neat sounds,
Yeah.
So and even to this day, you can have the most incredible laser array in the world that's shipping communication signals through the Opal system at NASA to a Mercury probe, and people go, "Wow, that's a cool purple laser color,"
Yeah.
That's what we grew up with.
So from arcades of the 1980s, then we also want to move into our next topic, which is MTV, the early days in the 1980s.
What's MTV?
Yeah, right, exactly. MTV, that's that channel that has that ridiculousness show and that 16-year-old girls having babies and stuff like that. MTV originally, and I'm gonna point this out. MTV, the M in MTV means music television.
No, it doesn't. It means Meshuggah.
Yeah, and the reason why they called it music television is because when it first came out, they showed these things called music videos. You had radio where they had disc jockeys where they spun the disc and you listened to the tune over the radio. Then you had MTV where they had VJs or video jockeys where they had videos. These same bands that had these hits, they'd make videos for their songs and they would play them on MTV, and it was like a radio station with video, if you can imagine such a thing. And that's what it was for a long time. Well, at the beginning there, for at least all of the 80s, it was like that. But then they started having these little shows, and they started moving away from it. Now it's whatever that is. But that's originally what it was all about. And there was a lot of, they had the music of that era, of course, there was New Wave. And New Wave, in my mind, is like some of the more cyberpunk kind of music, early, like Billy Idol, Missing Persons, some of the other, the Buggles, even that Video Killed the Radio Star, the very first song that debuted MTV. MTV came on the air, they played Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. That's a very cyberpunk video right there.
You also got Devo.
Yeah.
Split Ends. Who's I Want Candy Bow Wow Wow, right?
Yeah.
Let's see who else. You're
Thompson Twins.
Yep, My Sex, Thompson Twins.
Jay Giles Band.
Oh, Jay Giles Band. You got me. Well, that was the thing. MTV. It's funny if you look at it from a production standpoint, and how can we not? Because this is the kind of stuff that we do, amongst other things. But MTV was almost like an immediate stepchild, meaning that the MTV networks at the time, and I think it was Nickelodeon, because those used to run like 14-hour days. They didn't run the whole day. MTV did, but the reason why MTV did was because the people at Nickelodeon networks, and I don't know if most people understand this, but like say you have Channel 3 here, which is like a network channel, and then they're doing Telemundo. So Telemundo is their Spanish version, and it's down the hall. And what Telemundo is, other than a sales rep, is a guy that before used to jam videotapes, 3/4-inch videotapes into machines, but now like just does the digital programming, okay? And same thing at MTV. They were recording all that stuff ahead of time. So they were making like these shows, these 4 and 6 hour shows, and putting in their Clearasil commercials and all that, and just throwing it out the door.
Right.
And the thing was, it was almost better when it was neglected. It's because, see, MTV then had a philosophy, and that philosophy was, all of a sudden we can make twice the amount of money by booting Clearasil out and going for, hey man, is that Freedom Rock? Yeah man, we'll turn it up. And so they would sell those, weird compilation CDs, and then all of a sudden Pepsi, and people got wind of it, Dunkin' Donuts, whoever. But in the early days, and to your point, first it was promotional videos for bands. Then that had already been done, that had been done to like be shown at the Deb Joy shop while girls were shopping for jeans and stuff like that. Like they did 99 by Toto and like those companies. They weren't really done for MTV specifically, but were played when MTV first started. And then it became like Devo was one of the first bands to really realize the medium and go, oh my God, we're going to do an entire album of videos. So you got like, your Oh No, It's Devo and the beginning of New Traditionalists and all that. Same thing with B-52s. Like by the time that the like 1980, late 82, would you agree, maybe mid 83, just touching 1984, who do we forget? Duran Duran.
Right, yeah.
They were like gods of MTV. I mean, you want to the tunes, right? I mean, you got everything, right? Just name it. So yeah, I mean, and point well taken. New wave music, very much new wave. Whether it came out of Australia with Split Ends and My Sex, or whether it came out of America with Devo and 52s, and again, Missing Persons, who, if people don't know this, when Duran Duran was flailing and failing miserably, it was Warren Cucurullo from Missing Persons who came in and brought them back with that All She Wants Is and all that on that album they did in 1989, 88 or 89. So, so but like, you remember the concerts? Remember Friday night concerts?
I never watched any of those, but
boo!
And see, at that time, I was into the metal stuff. I mean, I'm talking about. I secretly did like the new wave, but I was a metalhead, so I had to pretend like I didn't like that stuff.
You didn't even see the Judas Priest concert, though?
I don't remember seeing. I saw. I remember a Black Sabbath concert that I saw, and with Ian Gillan, and I saw a vintage Iron Maiden with Paul Di'Anno. I saw that they had a concert there that I watched on MTV the one time. So there was stuff. I was always waiting for Kiss to do some more videos because I was big into Kiss at that time. But they only had a couple. Then they took their makeup off, and it's like, what are you doing? But
yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, most of the makeup stuff would have been like, remember how they used to do like the Jimi Hendrix Are You Experienced? It would be like a closet classic, so it would be like, a bunch of pictures and
closet
stuff like
classics. Oh yeah.
And that's what the Kiss videos would be. But then it was, whoa, tears are falling, ow. And but what did you think of I Love It Loud?
I love that video. First of all, I was really into that song when that album came out. I played that song like 60 times a day.
Oh,
but
cool.
I love that. I love that video. I thought that video was like when I look at it now, it's like it's so hokey. But I mean, for back then, it was pretty,
again,
it was pretty
think
cool.
of the technology, right? Think of the
Right.
technology and the money, but for the time, I mean, it was awesome.
Oh yeah.
But so I mean, did you ever see? It's funny because you say about like the new wave and all, and I'm sure that if I had watched a lot more 120 minutes and stuff like that was on at that time, because that was like more of the alternative, subversive kind of stuff.
Right.
Like
I remember
years
that
later,
too.
I've seen some Killing Joke videos that I've never seen. Like literally, like I saw it and went, I never saw that, right? Like I never saw that ever. And so I would be curious to ask you this, like, so you were into very much different music than we were at that time. You were into the darker metal and all that, like in later Cannibal Corpse and all that or whatever. I mean, you're not really into that, but like Pantera, let's say. I know I didn't necessarily watch the shows that would pander, for lack of a better term, Pantera to the masses, but yet years later, like I would see a video for something and be like, where was this? You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, come on, man. Like I would have been a hardcore Pantera fan if I had seen this, And I know Metallica kind of came into vogue with the Black Album and all that in the 90s, but even then, sometimes I see stuff and I'm like, I never saw, this with Jason in it, the bass player after Cliff or whatever. I'm like, I've never seen this. So, like, were there times where you saw videos for like I know you were into King Diamond for a while and stuff like that. Like, did you ever? Because there were concerts like that would show up on some channel somewhere, but like MTV really wasn't gonna. Isn't that Merciful Fate?
Yeah, they really didn't do too much of that at that. They tried to keep it as commercial as possible.
Sure.
They didn't really get. They had these metal shows though that I forget the name of them, but. They had one that was hosted by Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, and then they had one after that. But they were metal shows, and they did do some of the Slayer and the Testament and stuff like that that they showed. But that came later. That was towards the end of the 80s there, coming up on the 90s. And then, of course, when the 90s hit, then everything went grunge, and... that was reflected on MTV as well. It's like all of a sudden there's no metal.
Right.
All the hair bands are gone, Now you got this stuff.
And that's a real shame, too, because MTV really was to kind of wrap this around, I could talk about this all night. I mean, I don't want to bore
right,
people.
Yeah, well.
But at the same time, I mean, MTV was kind of like subversive at first.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where it started setting the trends. And then that was cool because they were ahead of the beat a little bit and setting the trends. And there was like a real chance that people could look at music across, like kind of like people now say, I listen to everything. And I'm like, you don't listen to everything. Trust me when I tell you, you don't. You think you do.
Nobody does. Nobody does.
Right. You don't listen to Gregorian chants. You don't listen to, come on. So the thing is, it had a real chance. But then it started being pulled into the realm of what George Carlin, I think, used to call the industrial spoiler. And the best example of that, and I was telling somebody this the other day, is in A Hard Day's Night, where they pull John Lennon into the hallway at the commercialization place, and they say, what do you think of these? And he looks at the clothes and he says, they're grunty. And he's like, grunty? And he's like, yeah, grotesque. And he's like, make a note of that word and give it to Susan. Who's Susan? She's our resident expert. She's the expert on culture now, right? So that's kind of like where MTV went wrong, is they started going, well, now my daughter thinks that this rap and hip hop thing is cool, and my son thinks this grunge thing is cool, and all of a sudden, what was a playing field of all different bands, sort of like the a music war of like the commercial television situation was great. You could watch Judas Priest one Friday night on MTV, and the next week it was Oingo Boingo at the Ritz in New York. It was awesome, right? And smoking. Like, even if you don't like that music, it's smoking hot, right? But then it became, Ed Lover and Dr. Dre. I mean, again, nothing wrong with that, but it didn't need to become that 24/7. It didn't need to become depression rock 24/7. It didn't need to become pop Katy Perry 24/7. And now they give out awards for videos that they've never shown. So it's just kind of gone the whole. It's sad, kind of. I really wish that it was back because my wife says Jackie, my wife says all the time, like, you must have been a real bear when you were 14. Because even now, when you see a grouping of good videos, you're like, well, I just want to see what the next video is. I just want to see what the next video is.
It all comes back around, so I'm still waiting for MTV to come back around.
And I'm waiting for record stores
and
video game stores. And I'm hoping, if there is a silver lining in the COVID world, it's that maybe people will, instead of just remembering how good it was, maybe they'll put their money where their mouths are and support it if we're lucky enough that some people still want to really do it. As in having a retail store, as in having a little place eking out a living, having people play video games that work decently,
Mm-hmm,
I mean, if I could run an arcade now and make enough money to live on, I'd do it.
Oh yeah,
I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. That yeah. certainly. Well said. And with that, I think we're the old clock on the wall is pointing towards us probably winding this up here a little bit. If you like what you've seen here tonight, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to share and subscribe. Pass it along to one of your friends that's into the cyberpunk culture, into technology, into video games, into otaku and weebo. And thank you for hanging out with us.
Hope you have a great night.
All right. So, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.